Now, yes, I know a lot of people are over here watching this video and are asking, why aren't you covering the state of play that's happening today? Go check out yesterday's upload to get a full rundown, but long story short, I'll be working today, unfortunately, and I will not be able to stream the actual showcase, but we will be back here tomorrow and tonight with some recaps, with some reactions, and what I think about the state of play and all that great stuff. But the topic at hand here is not involving the state of play. That is, of course, discussing some new concept art that may have been found in The Last of Us Part 1 that could point to Naughty Dog's next game being a fantasy game, or some other stuff that we will break down here in the video. We have a lot to discuss involving what could potentially be this, concept art that could be teasing a new Naughty Dog game, or be something else that could be in the sci-fi realm of things, or steampunk, or cyberpunk, etc. What's going on, guys? It is your boy TKD. Want to hear back in Plays and Source, and let's go over what could be Naughty Dog's next new IP. So I'm not sure where this is in The Last of Us Part 1. I'm not going to go back and look for it, you know what I'm saying? But it's there. We have gameplay. We have screenshots here. And this was found by Naughty Dog IR, but tweeted by an account named @IllaAkehaven, I believe is how you pronounce that Twitter account. But it depicts a woman next to a deer or goat type of animal, a serpent hanging from a glowing upside down triangle, which looks super cool in my opinion, a woman fighting a dragon seemingly, or just standing in front of its flames, a woman next to a bird of some sort just chilling there. And then we have a last image here of a white silhouette of what looks like a unicorn or some sort of horse, species or whatever. And these were all found in The Last of Us Part 1. And it definitely got a lot of people talking over the weekend because, of course, Naughty Dog is not shy of putting assets or certain materials that relate to a new or upcoming game in their next pipeline, right? Like, for example, with Uncharted 3, there was a newspaper that was referencing the cordyceps infection that broke out in The Last of Us that would come out a few years after Uncharted 3. And if you want to know more about that whole thing, definitely go check out that Last of Us iceberg video up on the channel. It's doing great. Really do appreciate all the love on that video. If you want to know more about Last of Us, definitely go check out that iceberg video after this one. But a lot of people were talking, right? This definitely was a lot of people assuming and pointing to, hey, this could be a new fantasy game from Naughty Dog, which I definitely can see what they're talking about here, and definitely do see that. But there is another part of this as well. These art assets were also found in The Last of Us Part 2 in a section where you're playing as Abby. So once again, not sure where these are directly in the game, but they do exist. These are real screenshots and everything. And we see these art assets as well in The Last of Us Part 2. More specifically, we see the woman that is fighting the dragon, the serpent that's hanging from the glowing white triangle, and the woman standing next to the bird creature as well. So could this be them repeating this kind of tease, right? And to be very fair here, we gotta just break it down here, right? These could easily be reused assets from The Last of Us Part 2 being used in The Last of Us Part 1 Last of Us Remake, right? That could definitely be it. We could end the video here. Y'all can go subscribe, stay tuned, all that great stuff. But hold on, wait a minute, hold up. Let's talk a little bit about what this could actually be based off of another leak that we got a few months ago that could definitely connect to this line of thinking. So I'm talking about a leak from @OopsLeaks that came out a few months ago that, to add credence to them before we read what they had to say about a fantasy game, they did give a accurate description of Factions 2 before Neil Druckmann said what he had to say at Summer Games Fest, when they tweeted here, Naughty Dog The Last of Us online game. Planned as a battle royale but got completely rebooted, described as a mix of Tarkov and Division with additional modes inspired by the original Factions multiplayer. Single player like experience in an online game, free to play, first on PS5 with further release on PC. So the real thing that Neil Druckmann actually cited from this actual tweet was that it was going to have like a single player feel to it. It's going to be narrative driven, story driven, and stuff like that. And on top of hearing that the game is going to have like a mix of Tarkov type of feel to it and the Division, people have been citing those ways at describing this new Factions game, and @OopsLeaks got that first, right? So if they were able to nail that, right, their next thing could be very interesting to this fantasy game. So they tweet here after this tweet, they say, quote, Naughty Dog new IP. Next major single player title. Neil Druckmann is not involved. Fantasy setting, at least what it looks like, currently in full production. He tweeted this on March 31st, 2022, nearly 2 months before Summer Games Fest. So yeah, although this artwork that we've seen in Last of Us Part 1 over the weekend could be just reused assets from Last of Us Part 2, because those same assets are in that game as well from 2 years ago, this could also be a part of a just ongoing thread of little crumbs and little teases that could be connected to what @OopsLeaks is talking about here on Twitter, which is reportedly a brand new fantasy game from Naughty Dog. I think that it's very clear here that OopsLeaks definitely does know stuff about Naughty Dog's productions, and I think that this could be related to that. I think there's just a shot here, right? But we could also go a little bit deeper here, right? Could we go a little bit deeper, guys? Let's go a little bit deeper. Come on in. Let's go a little bit deeper into this thread here, okay? He does say in the tweet, quote, at least what it looks like, right? At least that it looks like a fantasy setting, right? A fantasy game, right? So if it looks like it, that does leave it open to it not being a fantasy setting and not being a fantasy game, right? So what else could it be? This is where we go all the way back to 2018, where we have a Naughty Dog leak for an upcoming secret project, right? So we have this tweet in 2018. It says here, quote, the lead of the game, or at least one of the leads they are casting for, is a black African-American male, 40s to 60s, short to medium hair length with a body type similar to those in reference images below, strong but not chiseled. And so this is of course Captain Hammer from The Walking Dead, and this was connected to a few casting calls that Naughty Dog was putting out in LA for a secret project, right? But then in 2019, right, in 2019 we got new info of this Naughty Dog game in development that was codenamed STRAYS Cross. And so we're gonna go over a few info bits here that are in links in the description. If you want more details on these sources, you go check them out. It's a mix of a few Reddit threads and a few articles that I got together, and I got pretty much all the info that we know about this new game called STRAYS Cross in development at Naughty Dog. So the world is said to be inspired by steampunk, and unlike the company's previous games, this is also going to be in a first-person perspective, which is very interesting because they have never done a first-person game as far as I'm aware in Naughty Dog's tenure. So very cool to see that there as well. But we also have some really cool things about this game that we know of already from a meeting of some sort. There was a meeting with investors, I believe, and they laid out this information about STRAYS Cross, okay? So at the moment, the code name of the project is STRAYS Cross. STRAYS Cross will be an action-adventure game in first person with steampunk elements, and it will have two protagonists, a former female scientist, talented scholar, fascinated by space-time science. She discovers confidential documents that will lead her to discover a hidden truth much bigger than she could imagine, and a wanted criminal man, a former construction worker, unjustly arrested for protecting a wanted friend during a shooting against the police. The plot is about a secret conflict that lasted entire ages and how this will lead to the inevitable ruin of human society. And the story begins with the casual meeting of the two protagonists in completely different circumstances, who will soon find themselves having to work together to get what they are looking for. So at surface level, one might assume that these two games sound, you know, split, and they sound different, right? With a fantasy setting versus a cyberpunk steampunk setting, right? Like, how can these two games potentially be the same thing? They have to be two separate entities, right? But if you look at the reading here, we have a female protagonist that is fascinated with space-time science, right? And they're uncovering a conflict that lasted entire ages in a secret plot that will inevitably lead to the ruin of society. I think that this game, STRAYS Cross, is much more than just a fantasy game, and much more than just a steampunk and cyberpunk, you know, futuristic game as well. STRAYS Cross could literally be about two protagonists having to work together to solve a problem that spans, and with the use of her expertise in being able to manipulate space-time, maybe, and guys, I'll admit, this sounds kind of crazy and wacky, but hey, it's Naughty Dog, you know what I'm saying? Who knows, man? But maybe, just maybe in STRAYS Cross, we are going to work in 2 different time settings with the past fantasy type of aesthetic and then the, their modern day, cyberpunk, steampunk, futuristic type of future that they have in the game themselves. This game could span across hundreds of years, going back and forth with the use of this female protagonist experience in space-time science. So what are the closing thoughts here, right? So of course, with all of this, I think there's some really cool things that could probably be happening here, but I will say that above all else, this could just be reused assets, right? Like this could just literally be just, hey, they made assets that look cool on the wall of a person that lived in Last of Us universe and they're now gone and dead, and this is what they were into, right? Like there's a lot of that in The Last of Us, right? A ton of that, right? So that could definitely be it, right? And above all else, right, I still really want a new IP, in spite of me also wanting The Last of Us Part 3, which OopsLeaks does have a tweet about in this same thread that goes as follows. Last of Us Part 3, nothing but official statements from the studio. The outline of the script is ready, but the studio is engrossed in the development of the aforementioned projects. It is possible that development will begin faster than expected due to studio's expansion. So I definitely do agree that, above all else, we are getting Last of Us Part 3, and that's something that I also want as well, right? I do want The Last of Us Part 3 eventually, right? But I do also want a new IP from Naughty Dog, because if you look at it from a grand standing, right, next year in 2023 will mark 10 years since they've done anything new at Naughty Dog, right? They've only done Uncharted and Last of Us for 10 years starting in 2023, and if you look at Uncharted specifically, that is being 16 years at this point. You know what I'm saying? Like, and granted, the last Uncharted game was Uncharted Lost Legacy. That was, I believe, 2017, so it's been a few years since that as well. But above all else, it's been a while since Naughty Dog has done something new, right? So the potential of this, new game is definitely piquing my interest. My only thing here is that I do love the proposed aspect, if it is true, that, STRAYS Cross is delving into both the fantasy realms and the futuristic cyberpunk realms as well. But for me personally, I am much more of a fan of cyberpunk, steampunk vibes. I love sci-fi. That's definitely my jam, and I am definitely not into fantasy whatsoever, right? But hey, at the end of the day, it's Naughty Dog, so we'll see what they can do with this. And this concept of these two, with one being a retired construction worker that was unjustly arrested for protecting a friend and all that during a police shootout, which that also, has its own thing that I hope that Naughty Dog does do that well in this climate, in this time. You know what I'm saying? That's probably a whole conversation for another day, but just wanted to mention that, you know what I'm saying? That I hope they really do that justice and all that. And we have the other protagonist being a talented scholar who was fascinated in space-time, and this, fascination in space-time science, could that lead them to being able to time travel and go back and forth in between both fantasy realms and futuristic realms? Like, that sounds incredible, right? And with Naughty Dog storytelling, with their fidelity, with their way of crafting narratives and stories, like, this could be really cool. Yes, there is no doubt that I definitely love sci-fi more, 100%, right? I love cyberpunk, and like, I really wanted, a Naughty Dog to make Savage Starlight, right? And just have that be a real game. But this here sounds really intriguing in my opinion. But down below, guys, what do you guys think? Does this concept art point to STRAYS Cross? Does it point to the fantasy realm that STRAYS Cross could eventually be dabbling into if the game is real? Or is this simply just The Last of Us Part 2 reused assets on the walls of The Last of Us Part 1? What are your thoughts down below? And also, by the way, if you could, tell Naughty Dog to make any new IP, what would you want it to be? Would you want it to be something that is just fantasy, just sci-fi, or something here with STRAYS Cross that could potentially be pointing at a mixing of those two genres? Let me know all your thoughts down below in that comment section. And also, while you are down there, make sure you don't miss our description. You can find links to our Discord, our Twitter, and of course our Anchor link, where we are going to be recording the finale of Road to Part 1 this week. Hate to see it go. A Road is ending here this week on the Road to podcast series, but fret not, because Ragnarok is indeed coming. Like the video if you enjoyed it, as well as hit subscribe to PlayStation Source to keep up with the latest and greatest in PlayStation. Thank you all for watching, and as always, greatness awaits.